We have some breaking news. We have multiple Toronto Maple Leafs updates to go over today surrounding Bobby McMann, Auston Matthews, and some other players. And some of them are a little bit concerning, while others are very encouraging ahead of tomorrow night's big game. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, a quick reminder, if you're a part of the 70% who aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. This is the place to be for daily Leafs content. We had a video earlier today discussing some Mitch Marner contract updates. And now at practice, a ton of news has come out. We have a bunch of clarity surrounding Bobby McMann following his injury in last game. And of course, Auston Matthews. His return is now imminent. So let's start with, we will get to Bobby McMann, but let's start with Auston Matthews. Breaking news, he is back. Auston Matthews has officially confirmed his return will be tomorrow, and he will play against the Lightning. In my mind, I'm back and excited to play tomorrow. So the big storyline heading into the game tomorrow against the Tampa Bay Lightning was, will Auston Matthews have enough time, have enough practices to get himself acclimated and come out and play? We know he came out on practice a couple days ago, may have been Wednesday, and either way, the last practice, and said, I think it was Tuesday, and said, hey, I'm not going to be playing, until I feel ready, until I have a bunch of practices under my belt. And between their last game and tomorrow, they probably had, I think they had one or two practices. So clearly at this point, he thinks that he is ready to play and he feels conditioned. He obviously took his trip. He, got his body fixed and everything's right now, his injury. He said he wasn't going to be back until he's 100%. That's what he said. That's what Craig Berube said. That's what Brad Treliving said. So clearly he is 100% back. And we have some interesting lineup details and lineup changes as well to go over, which is going to be super intriguing there. But regarding Auston Matthews, he is back. Things are looking good. And quite frankly, the Leafs desperately need this. They're coming off of a pretty rough loss against the Florida Panthers. They got embarrassed on Wednesday. And now they need to go out and they need to actually, they need some scoring back in their lineup, especially with the amount of injuries they've had. Patches is out. Max Domi is out. David Kampf is out. Matthew Knies as well. We have an update on his front. He's also been out. So getting one of the better scorers, the best scorer in the NHL, at least last season and over the past handful of seasons, getting him back on your team, the best scorer in hockey, is obviously going to be huge. And the Leafs were able to sustain a solid record in his absence. Like, they played very well, but it's starting to catch up to them now just a little bit. And it's at the point where I think if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, you really need him back. You want his scoring, you want his playmaking ability, and where he actually factors in on the lines is going to be super interesting to see. We do have an update on that front, like I mentioned, and it's a little bit intriguing. We'll get into that a little bit later, but let's go over some of the other updates as well. Matthew Knies, really quick. Hopefully he'll be back in tomorrow. We'll see, but all signs point in that direction. He looked really good. So another positive update here is Matthew Knies is earing on the side of a return. It seems like everything is going well, unless he has a setback tomorrow morning at the skate and things like that. But I think all signs are pointing to a Matthew Knies and Auston Matthews return against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And this comes at a very important time because Bobby McMann just went down with an injury. You have a bunch of guys out. The Leafs were struggled a little bit against the Florida Panthers after playing playing really well, quite frankly, without Auston Matthews and without Matthew Knies for that matter. But now that they're starting to come back, they can really start to see, and the front office can really start to see what the team is looking like once fully healthy once again, because they are active in the trade market. Trade buzz around the NHL is really escalating at this point. Like, it's the most we've seen regarding trade buzz over the past handful of seasons. So to have them back, to have your best player back, and then of course a guy who's been one of your best players this season in Matthew Knies when healthy, finally figuring out how to use his frame, finally figuring out how to use his body with his physicality. It's going to be very interesting to see what he can do alongside Auston Matthews again. And we assume that he's, of course, going to be playing alongside him, and that's what the lines are kind of showing at this point. But we can dive into, there's a bunch of different things here. We can dive into Bobby McMann. So the first thing is he's out tomorrow against Tampa and is slated to miss a few games. So we know he went down with an injury, and everybody was hoping that this was just a precautionary thing, that he was going to be ready to come back against the Lightning, mainly because the Leafs are out so many players. They're down so many bodies that if you miss another player, I mean, at this point, their first liner when during Auston Matthews' absence in Bobby McMann, obviously manning that first line alongside Tavares and Marner in their absence, it was going to be a big hit. Now, what helps mitigate some of that is the fact that Auston Matthews is back and Matthew Knies, all signs are pointing to him coming back. You kind of have your first line guys again, even though I don't think they're going to be playing the first line in tomorrow night's game against Tampa Bay, which you'll see in a minute. But regarding Bobby McMann, he finally started to get his feet under him. He was finally starting to drive plays, and things were looking good on his front. And for a player who, you talk about guys like Pontus Holmberg, guys like Bobby McMann, Nick Robertson, people who struggled a little bit towards the, players that struggled a little bit towards the start of the season. Bobby McMann was one that took the opportunity to get moved up to the first line and ran with it. More so than Nick Robertson, more so definitely than Pontus Holmberg, and definitely Nick Robertson as well. He's off to a horrible start. But he spoke out and revealed some more details. Said it's hard for me to tell you exactly because it's kind of a day-to-day thing, right? But he's out right now. I wouldn't expect him back for a couple of games. So again, the Leafs don't play a ton. They play a ton in December, but they don't play a ton. They haven't played a ton recently. So game tomorrow, couple days off. I think after that, you hope that he's maybe going to be back sometime in the next week or two. I would lean on the side of not this upcoming week, but the week after is when they try to get him back, because the Leafs have four back-to-back games. So we play on 2 days in a row. They have that in December. They play on back-to-back games 4 times in the month of December, which is absurd. So almost every week, basically every week, they have a back-to-back game at some point, which is very not normal. That is very unusual for the Toronto Maple Leafs and for any team really in the NHL to have to do that. And it's because of how little they played in November. They played like 4 times in that past couple weeks, and it really has been a weird schedule, and it's going to get really grueling in the month of December because they play every Saturday, all these things. Hockey Night in Canada is back, but regarding the players like Craig Berube, Bobby McMann, they had to prepare their team to actually go out there and win. And that's some of the lines here, and we'll dive into that now. The Leafs lines during practice of November 2029 or November 29th, 2024. Knies, Matthews, Nylander, Holmberg, Tavares, Marner, Robertson, Minton, Lorentz, Steves, Dewar, Gurbenkin. So, like I mentioned, the lines aren't the same. Now, I did say earlier that the top line would change, but it's not the same as obviously it was before. You have Knies, Matthews, and Nylander now on the top line. So Tavares and Marner got moved down to the second line, which is very interesting because they're keeping that second line together, except you're replacing Bobby McMann with Pontus Holmberg. And then on the top line, you keep Knies and Matthews together, who have been playing really well together, but you move William Nylander up to the top line in replacement of Mitch Marner. So this is something we've been clamoring about all season, really. Something Darius and I have been, and we'll have another video on it tomorrow once the lines are confirmed. But it seems like they're going to rock with a Knies, Matthews, Nylander top line, which is a very powerful top line. And then you have Pontus Holmberg on the second line, which is a little bit interesting. But again, in a perfect world, Bobby McMann is probably on that second line. And they basically just took the top line that's been working. They kept it the same. They moved it down. They replaced Bobby McMann, with Pontus Holmberg. So if Tavares and Marner, and especially Marner, can continue his run of excellence, basically just playing really good hockey, I don't see a reason why this line shouldn't work. And now you have a way better top line. You have Knies, Matthews, William Nylander. Nylander and Matthews are back together. It's super intriguing. And again, the fourth line, Steves, Dewar, Gurbenkin. So you're also switching up the young line, the Marlies line, and you're getting Minton, Lorentz, and Robertson. So you have Lorentz now moving from the fourth line to the third line. A bunch of different things are going down. You have Robertson sticking on the third line. So you don't have you don't have that Gurbenkin, Minton, Robertson third line anymore. They wanted to get some more physicality in there. So you're moving Steven Lorentz up. You're moving Alex Steves, keeping him on the fourth line. You have Connor Dewar, and you're moving Nikita Gurbenkin down to the fourth line, which is very intriguing to me. I'm very curious to see how this actually works out in practice because, quite frankly, it is a lot of interesting things. We know a few days ago, Craig Berube spoke out and said, hopefully we get guys coming back here next game. They absolutely did that, and hopefully Auston Matthews, Matthew Knies, all these guys can take this change and run with it, and the Leafs can run with a bunch of wins. But that'll wrap it up. Let me know down below what your thoughts are. A ton of moves going down. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news. So make sure to hit the subscribe button. See you later.